Ja. Hallo und herzlich willkommen aus der Brencher Buchhandlung. Ich grüße alle Menschen, die hier in der Buchhandlung sind, und ich grüße alle Menschen, die uns bei YouTube zuschauen. Unsere erste Veranstaltung seit längerer Zeit mal wieder direkt in der Buchhandlung. Die Frankfurter Buchmesse wirft ihre Schatten voraus. Ehrengast in diesem Jahr wird Kanada sein. Und so freuen wir uns, dass wir einen kanadischen Illustrator und Autor zu Gast haben. Und ich freue mich, dass Rita Fürstenau vom Kasseler Rotopol Verlag hier ist, die das Ganze mehr oder weniger organisiert hat, die den Matthew Forsythe nach Kassel bzw. nach Deutschland geholt hat, mit ihm jetzt hier eine kleine Tournee macht. Ja, und wir werden jetzt ein kleines Künstlergespräch haben mit Rita und Matthew. Vielen Dank, dass ihr da seid, und vielen Dank, dass ihr das hier für uns macht. Das Ganze wird auf Englisch stattfinden, da Matthew natürlich perfekt Englisch spricht und weniger perfekt Deutsch. Und Rita wird dieses Gespräch mit ihm führen. Und ich wünsche uns und Ihnen und euch zu Hause dabei gute Unterhaltung und verabschiede mich jetzt hier und überlasse euch die kleine Bühne. Vielen Dank.
Ja, danke Jörg, und danke, dass wir hier sein können. And yes, hello and welcome.
Thank you. Dankeschön.
Thank you that you also made it here. And yeah, we thought we'd take it as an occasion that we published this book together, Pokko und die Trommel. I think many of you maybe know this. It's a picture book for children. And it's the first book that you wrote and that you illustrated. Mm-hmm. But before you did this book, you also worked on a lot of other projects. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about your journey, how you came to writing and illustrating this book, and what you did before also a little bit?
Yeah, I guess like I didn't go to art school, conventional art school. I studied politics, and then I kind of went out into the world and was traveling and working, and started making comics. I mean, I just always been drawing and always loved drawing. And I made some comics, and they did pretty well, and I made a picture book and it did pretty well. And then I decided to try and pursue it, which was pretty late. I was like in my late 20s. I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. And then I started working in animation. I got offered a job to work in animation in Los Angeles. So I worked on a really fun TV show down there for a while. And then made my way back to picture books because I really love picture books and how personal and expressive the medium is. And I illustrated probably 5 picture books with some amazing authors. And then this is the first one that I wrote myself. I was always determined to write my own books. So this was the first one that I wrote myself. And and I just wrote my second book, which is this one here, and it's called Mina. And this is coming out next spring. So yeah, I hope people like that one too.
Yeah, cool. Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about that a little bit earlier. The starting point for the story of Pokko somehow was a drawing, a sketch that you did in another context, I think on a beer coaster or something, like a sketch of a frog with a drum, probably.
Yeah.
So how was your creation process from there, like starting with this sketch? How did you then continue to build the world and build the story around that?
Well, this is something I talk about in workshops, but I think illustration is writing. So everyone who I know who is an illustrator has these sketchbooks full of wonderful ideas and characters and drawings and whole worlds that they've already built in visual illustrative form. So whenever they say like, what should I write a story about? I'm like, I think your story is already in your sketches. So for me, I tried to do the same thing. I looked back into my sketches at what were the most exciting characters or drawings that I had done. And yeah, this was one that I had done for a little gallery show in Oregon in the United States. And the story, I sort of sat with it for a while, and it really came out quickly. It came out in one afternoon. And then of course, the rewriting took a long time, but essentially I wrote it in one afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think these things are, sometimes they're already there, you know, we don't need to like go out into the world and find them. We've already put them down, especially if we're already illustrators or artists.
And also I think it's a really nice way how you work with text and illustration. And you already said like illustrating is also writing, like it's not just writing a story in words, but writing with images. How do you bring these together? Like how do you decide what you want to show in the image, or what information is in the text, and how do you bring these together in your books? Because
Yeah.
maybe we just show some pages also, right?
Yeah.
Like they have this.
Oh, this is the close-up camera.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we can do...
We should do it there.
Yeah, maybe.
Or no. Yeah.
Do
Then
you want to do over there?
we just switch remote. Let's see.
Yeah.
We can see it like that.
Well,
Maybe we just, you talk and I just
Yeah, I
go
think-
through this book a little bit.
I think the text and images really need to dovetail into each other, and they also, just like a dovetail, like they shouldn't be, they shouldn't repeat each other. You know, I think they should be complementary energies, and yeah, and so that's when I say it took 6 months to rewrite the book. That was really what I was thinking about. How does this text, how do the images work with the text? Because really, just because I had written the text in one afternoon, I still had to visually write the rest of it for the next 6 months. And I think that's the challenge of every illustrator when they're making a picture book, is they have to write either another story on top of the text layer or a story that integrates with the text layer. Yeah, because I do think it's very important that they sit beside each other and cooperate well.
And I also have the feeling that besides this, there is a third part taking part in this, at least in the reading and storytelling process, like having the reader in mind.
Yeah.
I can see that very strongly in your works, that you,
Yeah.
well, create also a rhythm that somehow thinks the person who will read the book, or who will read the book out loudly to
Yeah.
maybe another, like a child, for example.
Yeah.
So how do you, what are your thoughts about that? Like when
Well,
you
that's-
think about bringing everything together, like in the book?
Yeah, well, that I think is one of the biggest rewards of when you let the reader put the pieces together instead of putting them together for them, is that they often come up with worlds of ideas that you hadn't thought of, or they see your ideas even more profoundly than you had. So I did like these workshops in Berlin with with classrooms, and the students did collages based on the story, and they would talk about what they read into the story and how they, what they interpreted it to mean, and often they would say things that I was thinking, deeply, or even problems with the book that I was like, that's kind of a problem with the book, and they'd be like, this, they see things more, I think, more clearly, because you've kind of given them agency to really be involved in the book and not just sort of passively receive it. So yeah, it was really exciting to hear. It's always exciting to hear people's interpretations of the book, but I think this way of working, where the text and the image interplay with each other, then the reader can really bring their own interpretation to it. It makes it, I think it makes it more exciting for everyone.
And then, I mean, Pokko was quite a success, like as a book. I think a lot of people can relate to it, and created its own world a little bit. And since the book is out, because it was published last year already, you've been working on some other bigger projects, other collaborations, but you've been also working on your new book and finished your work on your new book. Like, we just show it one more time. And how was the process with that book then, having Pokko as an experience already and a piece of work that's already there, and then did you try to connect those to each other, or stay in the same kind of world building, or what was your approach there?
Yeah, of course. I loved the world that we'd built in Pokko, and then I wanted to stay in that world for this next book and build on it. And I think it made me, like, the success of Pokko, quote unquote, the success of people enjoying it and the great feedback I've gotten really gave me a lot more confidence to go deeper into the things I wanted to say, and to the the stories I wanted to tell, and the jokes I wanted to tell. It made me feel a lot more comfortable in my own voice, and that was exciting. But also, I think it's a very different book, and I think it was also different writing it because of the pandemic, so I was very isolated while I made Mina. And I think that comes through in the book. I think some of the themes speak to that a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how or if it resonates with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm also curious to see that. And I was also thinking maybe there are some questions from the audience. Like maybe you have some questions that you would like to ask. I can also translate them, that's not a problem. Like
Ja, vielleicht nochmal diese kurze Geschichte von dem Buch, würde mich noch mal ein bisschen interessieren.
von welchem?
Pokko.
Von Pokko. Oh yes, okay. Of course we can also talk a little bit about the story of Pokko. That's true. Shall we sum it up maybe a little bit? Or would you like to sum it up a little bit? Like what's the book about? And
Sure. I mean,
what's
the
happening?
short synopsis is that it's about a frog, a little family of frogs that lives in a mushroom, and it's about this frog gets a gift of a drum, and she's asked to go out into the forest, and everything sort of changes in the forest, and everything changes in the family, I think, because of it. But that's the short synopsis. But yeah, I think it's also just about making things and like our relationship with the things we make and the things we want to make, and our sort of also like, do we please our families when we're making our art, or do we please ourselves? I don't know. That's kind of a theme for me. Everyone who's ever shown your art to your parents or your friends or families knows what I'm talking about. It's much easier to connect with strangers sometimes than your own people.
Yeah, because Pokko, besides her parents loving a quiet surrounding, they send her out and she just continues to play the drum, right? Like she continues and continues, and then in the end also the parents have to admit that actually she became quite good with what she was doing. So I think that's a nice turn of the story also in the end.
Yeah, and it's also a thing I've observed, like just as being an artist for a long time now, for at least 20 years I've been doing this, and you just observe that in people like you and like our friends who are artists. Like there's an element of just persistence. Like we just keep making things. We do it through good times and bad times and ups and downs and good reviews and bad reviews, and we just keep making things, and the world kind of happens around us. And I saw that as like one of those old animations, like just the background changing behind someone, And I thought, wouldn't that be an interesting conceit for a picture book, where the character's just doing the same thing, but the background's just changing behind them every page. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah. So do you think there is a strong relation in your work between creating books and narratives for books and for animation or films?
I think so. I think they're all super related. I mean, I remember working on Adventure Time, which was this cartoon I worked on in LA, like just seeing the way the writers and artists really just stuck to their vision and didn't really think about what anyone else thought was really inspiring. They were just like, yeah, this episode's about, Jake this character turns into a brick for the whole episode, and just everything that happens around him. And, it just like, it was inspiring to see like them we just tried to fulfill that vision and not really compromise it with too many other noises. And sometimes I think it failed, and sometimes I think it worked just amazingly. And it's like, I feel like the best stuff is like that, when we just do our best, we put it out there, and then it works or it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For this one, it really works.
Oh, dankeschön.
That's good.
Dankeschön.
There's actually a question.
Yes.
Maybe you can repeat it.
Yes,
So
sure.
the question is there a method to Matt's approach in layering watercolors and colored pencils, for example? Which one do you start with?
Oh.
Okay, so I repeat it so that everyone can hear it. Okay, do you have a certain approach or method to work with the techniques that you use, like the watercolors and the pencils, how you layer those, and
Of
how
course.
to come to the final painting?
Of course, yeah, I always get this question. Yeah, actually, so I always, I always do sketches in colored pencils, so of course the sketch is in pencil, and I do many sketches until I like the composition. And then I start with watercolor, thinking about color temperature and temperature movement in paintings, so warm to cool. And then, I think the earliest layers are watercolor, very loose like watercolor. And then I just refine and tighten, and I keep layering back and forth, gouache, watercolor, pencil, until I deepen the values, the tones, until I like the values and tones. And then sometimes I go too far, and that's fine. I just bring it back with lighter gouaches or opaques, and just keep going until I like the painting. I took an oil painting class once, and I think what I learned from that painting class was that there are no bad paintings, there are just paintings that aren't finished yet. So I just kind of keep pushing through with my paintings until I get the values that I want. I hope that's useful to whoever's listening.
And then do you also create like one color scheme for the whole world? Do you think through it before you start, or is it more an intuition that you follow for each book?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't think I think it was intuitive, but yeah, this book sort of took on more of a green foresty vibe. But then the new book, Mina, there's this sort of purple pencil that I was using a lot last year that I really loved, and the whole book kind of took on this more cool blue purple vibe. But in terms of like really planning it, it's not something I super plan out, and maybe I should plan it more, but I'm not too. I do love leaving those things, those discoveries for while I'm working too. And yeah.
So to also get a little bit surprised in the process? Is
Absolutely.
that something that you would say?
Absolutely. Every painting is actually a surprise. I mean, sometimes I have a very clear vision of what I want, but it often doesn't turn out the way I want. I mean, I just kind of have to keep moving it until it's done. And I can see when it's done, and I think the most exciting paintings for me are the ones where they're completely different and they surprise me, which is most of them. I don't really know how any of them are going to really look or feel till it's over. And it's really each day that each day is like a new painting and a new direction.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And how did you find Rita? And how did you find Matthew?
Yeah, I can answer that. We've been old friends, right?
Yeah.
Because Rita makes amazing comics. She's a brilliant comic book artist herself. And on top of that, somehow is one of the best publishers in the world. And I mean, in the comics, honestly, in the comics industry, people are really big fans of Rotopol, and I've always been a fan of her work as a publisher. So we would meet at TCAF sometimes, which is a Toronto comics festival, a great festival in Canada. And we always wanted to work together. We did some gallery shows and zines, but never got to do a book together. So when this picture book came out, I think that was our first opportunity to. And it's been amazing for me. Like, I love Rita's design sense. I love like your values and your sensibilities. So every time you're like, what do you think about this print or this postcard? Everything just always looks beautiful. And now I'm going to let you do all that work from now on.
Okay.
Even in North America, even in other territories.
We'll see. Yes. Yeah, I think it was also great because I've been following your work for a long time, and also like following the other books that you illustrated, that you collaborated with other authors with. So we always got a copy to our office and just looking, okay, what's going on? Is this something we should take into consideration to publish?
Yeah.
But as we are a publisher actually for books that are also written by the artists, I thought this was just perfect. Like, I was so happy when I saw a note that you are working on this book, and we were talking about it, and I was like, okay, this is the book we finally have the chance to collaborate with together. So I'm really happy.
Me too. And it's kind of your first picture book.
Yeah.
Like, as it were.
That's true. Like, we've been doing picture book for adults, like illustration book for adults for a while, and comics and graphic novels, and also started to do comics for children.
Yeah.
But then the decision to start with picture books, I mean, it's always been there. It's always sitting there and waiting for the right book, like the perfect book to come. And I thought this is just, perfect.
Yeah.
And it ties together the program in a very nice way. Like, So, yep.
With the theme of the book being also about kind of having confidence to kind of make your art and pursue your art, would you say it's for grown-ups just as much as children? And what inspired you to make it? I find it really interesting that it's a female frog. Normally frogs are always male.
Right.
So I'm just really curious. Who did you have in mind when you made it? You said a bit about this before, but where was the inspiration, and who was it for? Yeah,
sorry. So wait, the first part of the question, because they're both good questions. The first part was what again?
Who is it for? Or do you think it's for grown-ups just as
Okay. So yes, definitely. I don't think about writing for children or writing for adults. really writing for myself, very selfishly, because I've been in a lot of meetings. I've made a lot of books for kids now, and there's a lot of meetings where it's like, well, children want this or children want that, and it's such a silly conversation topic. Like, kids are just as diverse as adults. They want everything, that adults want. There's no monolithic, there's no one thing. So for me, the easiest thing to get a handle on is what I would enjoy, and I'm still very in touch with, I think, my own inner child and my own, I love picture books my whole life. So yeah, I very much am just trying to like entertain myself and hope that translates. And then, sorry, the second part was also really good too. You were like...
Yeah, I guess what inspired you to tell the story,
Yeah.
and why a female frog?
Yeah, okay, so this is interesting too, because I think, because Pokko's whole thing is just being loud and going into the forest. And I made this during the Trump era, and I think we were all just sick of loud men at that time. We were just like fed up with men making all this noise. And I think some people were like, this will be great, it'll give boys, because there was an earlier version that I didn't write actually, but it was like, well, it'll give boys like encourage them to be loud and be themselves. And I'm like, we don't need any more boys feeling encouraged to be loud and be themselves. Like, that whole thought actually disgusted me at the time. And it was easy. It was an easy choice to make it a girl, especially in the context of the family and the forest. Like, it just felt, of course this is a girl. And I also I don't talk about this much, but I think it's something that people have noticed in the book is like, just not even drawing attention to the gender roles, like with the father and the mother, but like, not even like drawing attention to what roles fathers are supposed to play or mothers. I've come from a very unconventional family, and I feel like a lot of picture books cater to very conventional families, and I want books like my next book also is very unconventional in the family. It's just a mouse and her father, and that's the whole family. But like, just want to be like, this is normal too. It's weird, like not weird. It's just like, this isn't, there's no sort of like normal for what a family should be. And I think like, that's more about, I think, the parental roles that I'm speaking about. But yeah, hopefully, I don't know. I've noticed that resonated with a few people, and that really means a lot to me when people pick up on that.
Yeah, especially the thing about gender and what a big role actually kids or books for young people play in terms of how we perceive gender from an early age on. That's really exciting.
Right. Right.
You have that as a kind of, that you question that in a way by telling the story like you are. That's really great.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, some more thoughts or questions over there. Okay, so I have one then.
Okay.
What did you enjoy most, or what do you enjoy most when you are creating your own work and bring it into the form of a book?
Oh, yeah, it's such a long road, right? Like, I think Pokko and Mina both took a year from the first draft to the final. I don't know, I still love those moments of meditation when you're painting, and you get into this meditative bliss. It's something like, I had always worked, in animation, I worked on computers a lot because we had to deliver things on a very fast deadline, and I worked all my art on computers. But then when you paint and you feel the brush touching the paper, it really is like cathartic, and it's this moment of like quietness, and I really feel like, I feel really privileged in those moments to be able to make like art, and I can see why art is used as therapy, because it feels very therapeutic to myself. So yeah, I think like a good day of painting, nothing kind of beats it still. Yeah.
Great.
And also meeting peers from around the world, like other artists. Like, it's crazy after this like year and a half of pandemic, coming to Berlin and meeting people, who are also in the book industry, and it's really wild how we have these networks of like, that's a big privilege too.
Yeah. And also including bookstores like this one. So it's really great that we can be here.
Yes.
And yeah.
Könnt ihr noch einen kleinen Ausblick auf das neue Buch geben?
Yes, sure. Do you want to give a little peek into Mina and what's going on with your new book?
Yeah, Mina. So Mina is about a family of mice that lives in a piece of wood. And it's about, basically the family of mice gets a pet cat.
So yeah, please stay a little longer. And
Yeah, thank you so much for coming, and thanks for your thoughtful questions. That was really sweet.
Thank you.
Oh, and there's postcards for everyone.
Oh yeah, right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.